I'm 70 years old, and people still call me a success. For 38 years, I was Senior Vice President of Operations at Northbridge Logistics Group, right here in Chicago, Illinois. My office sat on the 42nd floor of a building on Wacker Drive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. I drove a Mercedes S-Class, charcoal gray, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but everyone notices anyway. My annual bonuses were larger than my father ever earned in his entire life. Some years, they were larger than what he made in a decade. When I walk into a restaurant, I still get recognized occasionally. Former colleagues, industry people, they shake my hand with both of theirs. They say things like, "Robert, you're a legend," or "You built that place." And I smile. I thank them. I act like those words still mean something. But I need to tell you something uncomfortable. Something I've spent the last 8 years coming to terms with. Alone in a house that's too big for one person. Everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed for, everything I told myself mattered. It cost me the only things that actually mattered. The only things that would have been there when the corner office emptied out and the business cards stopped working. If you're under 40, if you're climbing right now, if you're telling yourself just one more year or they'll understand later, this may be the most important thing you hear this year. Because I said those exact words. And I was wrong. I was born in 1954 in Peoria, Illinois. My father's name was Frank Donovan. He worked the assembly line at Caterpillar. 41 years in the same plant, building tractors and dozers that people all over the world depended on. My mother, Patricia, worked as a lunch aide at Jefferson Elementary. She wore a hairnet and served sloppy joes to third graders for minimum wage. We weren't poor. Not exactly. But we lived in that space where you're always aware of money, where you know which bills come when, where going out to dinner meant the Ponderosa Steakhouse on someone's birthday, if we were lucky. My father would come home every night around 6:15, his hands cracked and dry, his work shirt stained with oil and metal shavings. He smelled like machinery and sweat. I remember sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, watching him wash his hands at the sink, scrubbing with that orange pumice soap, trying to get the grease out from under his fingernails. He never complained. That's what kills me now looking back. He never once said he hated it, but I could see it in his shoulders, the way they sagged when he sat down, the way he'd fall asleep in his recliner 10 minutes into whatever was on TV, his mouth open, his breathing heavy. I made a vow when I was 14 years old. I remember the exact moment. I was sitting in the back of his Chevy Nova, and we'd just left a parent-teacher conference. My English teacher had told my parents I was smart, really smart, that I could go somewhere if I worked hard. I watched the back of my father's head as he drove, his thinning hair, the way he nodded quietly. And I thought, I will never live like this. I didn't mean it cruelly. I loved my father. I still do. But I made a decision that night that shaped everything that came after. I would be different. I would win. I would climb so high that exhaustion would be optional, that security would be guaranteed, that nobody I loved would ever have to worry about making it to the next paycheck. I got a scholarship to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, studied economics, graduated near the top of my class, got my MBA later from Northwestern Kellogg. Every step was deliberate, calculated. I believed, with every cell in my body, that success equaled safety, that if I won hard enough, if I built enough, earned enough, proved enough, nobody I loved would ever struggle the way my father struggled. I believed success was the answer. I was wrong. Success was just the anesthetic. My first job out of business school was as an analyst at Midwest Freight Solutions. I made $38,000 a year and thought I was rich. I worked 70-hour weeks. I lived in a studio apartment in Lakeview that smelled like the Thai restaurant downstairs. I didn't care. I was hungry. I got promoted every 18 to 24 months like clockwork. People noticed me. I had something they wanted, that relentless drive, that willingness to be the last one in the building, the first one to say yes. In 1994, Northbridge Logistics Group recruited me. I was 39 years old. They made me Director of Supply Chain Optimization. It was a title that sounded important, and it was. I wore suits that actually fit. I stopped checking my bank account before I swiped my card. I started to feel like I'd made it. I met my wife, Catherine, at a charity fundraiser in Evanston in 1995. She worked in event planning. She had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, even when the room had 200 people in it. We got married 10 months later. We lived in a modest condo in Lincoln Park. We had dreams, small ones at first. Maybe a house someday, maybe kids, maybe a life where we weren't always rushing. Our son, Daniel, was born in 1996. I was in a board meeting when Catherine went into labor. I got there 20 minutes before he arrived, still wearing my tie. I held him in the hospital room, this tiny, impossibly fragile thing. And I remember thinking, I will give you everything I didn't have. I meant it as a promise. It became an excuse. Our daughter, Sophie, was born in 1999. By then, I'd been promoted to vice president of logistics operations. My salary had doubled. We'd bought a house in Naperville with a backyard and a 2-car garage. We had everything we were supposed to want, and I was never home. I started missing dinners. Then I started missing bedtime. Then I started missing entire evenings. Catherine would call, and I'd say, just wrapping something up. Be home soon. Soon became midnight. Midnight became don't wait up. I told myself it was temporary. I told Catherine it was temporary. I said the phrase so many times it lost all meaning. Just a few more years. But the years didn't stop. They compounded, and so did my absence. There was a night in the winter of 2003 that I think about more than any other. It was a Thursday. Snow was falling outside my office window, fat flakes catching the light from the street below. It was 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I looked at my watch when my phone vibrated on the desk. A voicemail from Catherine. I almost didn't listen to it. I had a board meeting the next morning at 7, and I was still tweaking the PowerPoint deck. Revenue projections, cost optimizations, the kind of thing that feels urgent when you're in it and meaningless when you look back. But I listened. Her voice was quiet, tired, not angry. That would have been easier, I think. Just defeated. Robert, I know you're still at the office. Sophie had her school play tonight, the winter showcase. She was a snowflake. She had a solo line. She did beautifully. But there was an empty seat in the front row. She kept looking for you. I told her you'd try to make it, and she believed me. She kept looking at the door. I thought you should know. The message ended. I stared at the phone for maybe 10 seconds, and then I deleted it. I went back to the PowerPoint. I adjusted a graph on slide 14. I changed the font on slide 9 to match the corporate style guide. I worked until almost midnight, drove home through empty streets, and slipped into bed next to Catherine, who was already asleep, or pretending to be. I told myself I'd make it up to them. I told myself I'd be at the next one. I told myself that providing for them, securing their future, was the same thing as being there. I told myself a lot of things that winter. None of them were true. The absences started to blur together. Daniel's little league games. He played second base. I made it to maybe 3 games total across 2 seasons. Catherine stopped telling me when they were. She'd just take him, come home and say, he went 2 for 3 today. And I'd say, that's great, buddy. And Daniel would nod and go upstairs. Sophie's piano recitals. She was good, really good. She practiced every night after school, these little Chopin pieces that drifted through the house. I'd hear them sometimes when I got home late. This faint ghost of her playing from earlier in the evening. I missed every single recital, every one. We planned a family vacation to Colorado in the summer of 2006. We were going to stay in a cabin near Breckenridge, go hiking. Sophie was so excited she made a countdown calendar. 3 days before we were supposed to leave, the contract negotiation in Memphis fell apart. I canceled. I told them to go without me. They didn't. My marriage to Catherine didn't collapse all at once. It eroded, slowly, like a shoreline losing sand. She stopped asking when I'd be home. She stopped waiting up. She stopped planning things that included me. By 2008, we were sleeping in separate bedrooms. She told me it was because I came home too late and woke her up. That was true, but it wasn't the reason. We stopped arguing because arguing requires hope that something might change. We just existed in the same house, moving around each other like roommates who signed a lease neither of us could break. But my career? My career was flawless. I was promoted to Senior Vice President of Operations in 2010. My salary crossed 7 figures for the first time. I was featured in Crane's Chicago Business, one of the city's top logistics minds. They called me. They took my photo in the office, standing in front of that window with the river behind me. I looked successful, confident, untouchable. The irony is I celebrated that promotion with dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse, prime rib, a martini, alone at a table for 1, surrounded by couples and families, scrolling through emails on my phone between bites. I didn't even notice. There are 1,000 small moments I can't get back, but there's one that I think about every single day. It was October 2014. Sophie was 15, a sophomore in high school. I was in back-to-back meetings all day, a restructuring plan, a merger negotiation, the kind of thing that felt like the world would end if I wasn't there. My phone buzzed around 2:30 p.m. A text from Sophie. "Dad, can you come home early today?" I looked at it between meetings. I had 3 more hours minimum, probably 5. I texted back, "Can't, sweetheart. Crisis at work. Tomorrow?" She didn't respond. I didn't think about it again. Not that day. Not for weeks. I came home around 10 p.m. The house was quiet. Catherine was reading in the living room. Sophie's bedroom light was off. I assumed everything was fine. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't know for years, was that Sophie was being bullied. A group of girls in her class had been sending her messages, leaving notes in her locker, making her life hell. She'd worked up the courage to ask me to come home because she needed to talk to someone. She needed her father. And I said no. She never asked again. I found out by accident, years later, after she'd moved out for college. I was helping her clean out her old bedroom, and I found a journal tucked in the back of her closet. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But I did. Most of it was normal teenage stuff. Boys, friends, classes. But there was an entry from October 2014, the same month she'd texted me. It said, "I tried to talk to Dad, but he's always busy. I think he loves his job more than me. Maybe if I was a spreadsheet, he'd pay attention." I sat on the floor of her empty bedroom and cried for the first time in 20 years. I retired when I was 62. They threw me a farewell party in the Northbridge boardroom. 70 people showed up. The CEO gave a speech. They presented me with a Mont Blanc pen engraved with my name and the years of service. 1994, 2016. Everyone stood and applauded. Someone took a photo. I'm smiling in it, shaking hands, looking like a man who won. I drove home that night to a house in Naperville that cost $1.8 million. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen I never cooked in, a backyard I never used. Catherine had divorced me 2 years earlier. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, which is lawyers speak for, "You were never really here." Daniel lived in Seattle. He called on birthdays and holidays. Our conversations lasted maybe 10 minutes. Surface level, weather, work, he was polite. But there was a distance between us that felt permanent, like a lake you can see across but can't swim. Sophie was in Boston. We texted more than we called. She was polite too, always polite, but emotionally closed, careful, like she'd learned not to expect too much from me, and that learning had become permanent. I woke up every morning in that big, quiet house, made coffee, read the paper, checked my email out of habit, even though nobody was emailing me anymore. The hours stretched out. I'd go to the gym, run errands, meet former colleagues for lunch occasionally, where we'd talk about business and politics and nothing that mattered. At night, I'd sit in my living room and realize I had no one to text, no one who needed me, no one whose day I was a part of. I had won everything I set out to win, the title, the money, the recognition, and I had no one to share it with, no one who cared that I'd won, because the people who might have cared, the people I told myself I was doing it all for, had learned to live without me long before I retired. Success gave me everything and left me with nothing. If you're watching this after midnight, still at your desk, still telling yourself, just one more email, I need you to stop. If you're missing dinner again, if your kids are already asleep when you get home, if your partner has stopped asking when you'll be there because they already know the answer, I need you to hear this. If you're telling yourself that your family understands, that they know you're doing this for them, that they'll appreciate it later when the money's there and the security's there and the success is undeniable, I need you to know that you're wrong. They won't appreciate it later. They'll resent it now, and that resentment will calcify into distance, into silence, into separate lives that happen to share the same address until they don't even share that anymore. Work will always reward your absence, always. The company will promote you. They'll give you more responsibility, more money, more reasons to stay late, more justifications for missing what matters. Because work doesn't love you. It uses you. And when you're done, when you retire or burn out or get replaced by someone younger and hungrier, work will forget you in 6 months. But your family? Your family will remember. They'll remember every missed game, every forgotten recital, Every time you said, next time, and next time never came. They'll remember the empty chair, the unanswered text, the voicemail you deleted, because you had more important things to do. Here's the truth I learned too late. Your kids don't need your money. They need your presence. They don't need the big house or the nice car or the college fund that's fully loaded. They need you there, actually there, not distracted, not exhausted, not half listening while you scroll through your phone. There. Success isn't the promotion. It's not the title. It's not the corner office or the salary or the respect of people who don't actually know you. Success is knowing that when something hurts, when something matters, when something breaks, there are people who call you first, people who need you, people who love you not for what you provide, but for who you are. I have none of that. I traded it all for a resume that nobody reads anymore and a bank account that nobody spends but me. Don't do what I did. Don't tell yourself you'll fix it later. Don't believe the lie that success now equals happiness later. It doesn't. It equals loneliness in a house that's too quiet, with people who are polite but distant, wondering where the hell all the time went and why you can't get any of it back. If I could go back, here's what I'd do differently. I'd leave the office at 5. Even when the project wasn't done. Even when the meeting ran late. Even when my boss expected me to stay. I'd leave. I'd miss the conference call. I'd skip the networking dinner. I'd turn down the promotion if it meant more travel, more hours, more distance. I'd sit in the front row at the school play. I'd be there for the piano recital. I'd coach Little League even though I don't know anything about baseball. I'd be bad at it, and my kids would know I was trying, and that would matter more than being good. I'd answer the text from my 15-year-old daughter asking me to come home early. I'd cancel the meeting. I'd walk out of the office and drive home and sit with her and listen, really listen. And maybe, just maybe, she'd know that she mattered more than the crisis at work. I'd choose the people who won't be at my retirement party, because the people at your retirement party are co-workers, professionals, people who respect what you did, but don't love who you are. The people who won't be there, the ones at home, the ones who stopped waiting, the ones who learned to live without you. Those are the people who mattered. And I chose the wrong ones. So here's what I need you to do. Right now, today, this week. Go home, close the laptop, turn off the phone, walk away from the thing that feels urgent, but isn't. Walk toward the thing that feels ordinary, but is everything. Choose the people who love you over the people who use you. Choose presence over productivity. Choose the small, quiet, unremarkable moments that don't go on your resume, but make up a life. Because I'm 70 years old. I built an empire. I earned every dollar. I climbed every ladder. Success gave me everything I asked for, and it took everything that mattered. So I'll ask you one last time, what is your success costing you right now, and is it worth it?